today may be descended from a single common mother who lived in Africa nearly 142,000 years ago. That's a fact, that all humans alive today may be descended from a single common mother who lived in Africa 142,000 years ago. Did you know that farmers who use pesticides and fertilizers are no more productive than those who use little or no chemicals? That's right. Farmers who use pesticides are no more productive than those who use no chemicals or little chemicals at all. And did you know that by improving automobile efficiency by only 3 miles per gallon, the U.S. could eliminate Mideast oil imports? Yes, by improving automobile efficiency by only 3 miles per gallon, the U.S. could eliminate Mideast oil imports. Do you know that we are gluttons when it comes to consuming the world oil? There won't be much left 40 years from now. Not much at all. It'll be all gone.
Well, I have this to say. I know that Americans have a lot of vigor, but did you know that last year we spent over $120 million in our efforts to kill cockroaches? And that's a lot of money. I wonder if we should be spending over $120 million each year to kill cockroaches. What does Mr. Nixon have to say about this?
Well, I would say that if the ozone layer were ever brought down to the Earth's surface, it would be only 1/4 of a millimeter thick. That's right, if the ozone layer were brought down to the Earth's surface. Mr. Nixon, you're avoiding the question. Could you please respond to Mr. Kennedy? Well, I just believe that cockroaches are not the issue. I think that the ozone layer is more important than cockroaches. Well, Mr. Nixon, how do you feel that 1 child in 5 in the U.S. is born poor? I think that's not an issue.
Yes, well, Mr. Kennedy, how do you feel about the fact that 60 to 90% of the chemicals sprayed on crops are used for beautification and not to improve the quality of the food?
Well, let me repeat that last year over $120 million was spent by Americans in their efforts to kill cockroaches. Over $120 million was spent to kill cockroaches in America last year. I think this is an issue that has tremendous philosophical implications. Killing cockroaches, yes.
And then there's bombs. We've exploded 2 nuclear bombs in Japan, but we've also exploded 670 nuclear bombs in western Shoshone tribal territory.
That's sick. That's just sick. That's just sick. That's just sick. That's just...
Well, Hello, my name's Representative Lloyd Benston, and I would like to tell Montanans about a terrible bill that is now before them on Capitol Hill, presented by Senator Burns. And did you know Conrad Burns brings a spittoon into the Senate? Well, anyway, and Baucus have introduced a terrible bill that threatens to Montana's future, its forests, its fishing and hunting, and its children.
Don't listen to that guy. The devil will develop Montana. Trailer courts will spring up next to gold mines, leaching cyanide, poisoning our streams for money. Billions will leave the state, but jobs will go to some Montanans. Yeah, the devil's working with Baucus and Burns on Capitol Hill, you can be sure. They're putting their chips down to gamble away Montana's only future. Some may boom and towns may bust, but they'll roll away, mobile homes will roll away.
The devil will develop Montana.
We would like to turn our useless, stupid, wild national forests into tree farms where only the best trees may grow for our lumber mills. Support Baucus and Burns' Senate bill and sell Montana's remaining roadless national wild forest to expert tree farmers. Now that's thinking about the future. Tree farms for everyone to look at. The wild animals will have to go, of course, in the name of progress, in the name of tree farms. We would like to turn our useless, stupid, wild national forests into tree farms, where only the best trees may grow, for our lumber mills, where only the best trees will grow for our lumber mills.
Montana, Montana, colony of the West. Of all the states from coast to coast, you've sold your soul the most. Montana, Montana, we know who owns you. Pegasus, Chevron, Asarco, Montana, God help you. Boom, boom, Montana, Montana, why must you be a whore? You give your riches to son of a bitches who live on foreign shores. Montana, Montana, you boom and then you bust with poisoned streams and sold-out dreams. Montana, God help you. God help you, Montana.
Well, you know, it takes an entire forest, over 500,000 trees, to supply Americans with their Sunday papers. Every week, it takes over 500,000 trees to supply Americans with their Sunday newspapers every week.
Well, Sergeant, I'd like to read a letter I'm writing to my congressman in Washington about a terrible bill. It's been introduced on Capitol Hill by Senator Baucus, and I write this to my congressman, that the bill is an attack on our civil rights. It would severely curtail rights to administrative appeal and judicial review for lands released to development. Roadless area timber sale appeals would be banned. Bloated forest plan logging levels would become unchallengeable. And also, Sergeant, this bill mandates more taxpayer-subsidized logging and road building in our remaining roadless wilderness areas. More than 4 million acres, over twice the size of Yellowstone Park, would be mandated for development. These areas are proposed for wilderness protection in the Northern Rockies Ecosystems Protection Act, endorsed by 150 organizations and businesses. Well, I've heard about that bill, soldier, and I think Baucus is really a sleazebag here. Doesn't sound like a wilderness bill to me. It sounds like he's just doing it for political expediency, not even thinking about the future, or Montana, or the bioregion, or the animals, or the trees, or the forests. Multinational corporate timber companies have destroyed their own land and ruined fish and wildlife habitat. Their overcutting has also eliminated jobs and exported profits from the region. And now Max Baucus wants to reward these corporate giants by giving them free rein to destroy our public forests. His bill must be stopped. Yes, Your Honor, I just wanted to say before Congress here, as I take the oath, that our national forests are being cut down, some of them, and sent to Japan to make disposable diapers. And did you know that Americans throw away 18 billion disposable diapers a year, enough to stretch to the moon and back 7 times? I just think that should be on the record here, and that's all. Thank you. Take that man away from the mic. Take that man away from the mic.
I'm holding in my hands a microfilm that reveals living obvious proof that our clear cuts in our national forests across America have been extremely devastating. Along with reports that we now have in our hands, we know that timber mining, removing the best trees from the forest, has reduced genetic diversity, hence the ability of forest ecosystems to adapt to changing conditions. In addition, little attention was paid to long-term forest productivity, and we know now that the average American uses the equivalent of 7 trees every year. That's over 1.5 billion trees used annually in the United States. Now, this doesn't need to be the case. We could be looking to other alternatives besides trees. We could be looking to ganja or hemp, which has been used for thousands of years, and I think we should be returning to that crop for producing wood products and paper products and many other products from hemp. We can grow that and save our remaining wild forests from making useless products such as disposable diapers. That is not necessary. We can grow hemp instead. These photos, as I say, just show the tremendous destruction that is happening.
Well, Regional Forester John Muma, please take to the stand. Hello, my name is John Muma. I was the highest-ranking executive regional forester to speak out against our way we're cutting down our forests. And I just want to say that planting new trees to replace old ones doesn't work well in most of Montana because there's little rain. Let me also say that what we've witnessed in the past 15 years or 20 years is a mad rush to the bank. We can't keep this up. We're running out of all the big trees. It's time for someone to say, whoa, and that's what I was hoping to do until they took me out of my position. Thank you. That's all I want on the record. Government has overestimated reforestation and growth rates on national forests in the Northwest, resulting in exaggerated logging quotas that cannot be sustained, a congressional report said recently. The mismanagement of these forests has been devastating, says Representative George Miller of California. He said this in the releasing of the study of 15 national forests in Oregon, Washington, California, Idaho, and Montana. He went on to say this report shows that in spite of repeated assurances by the Forest Service, the forests we've cut down are not growing back. The study prepared by committee staff shows dozens of examples of phantom forests where logged areas have not regrown and timber inventories have been overstated. By exaggerating inventories and regeneration, the Forest Service and Bureau of Land Management justify cutting more timber than would be allowed under the government's sustainable harvest policy. A mapper for the Forest Service first raised concern about inventories publicly in February. Leroy Lee of Santa, Idaho said inflated government logging quotas on a national forest in Montana were based on thousands of acres of phantom trees that were cut years ago but still show up in Forest Service computers. It's pretty clear what they ended up with in their computer program doesn't resemble what they really have on the ground. On one ranger district near Idaho and Canadian borders, he said, nearly 3/4 of the barren clear-cut lands are on the books as mature timber. Spokespersons for the Forest Service and BLM declined immediate comment, saying they had not seen the report. Representative Miller had this to add, quote, "The Forest Service does not check whether new saplings are growing after they are 3 years old. They do not check forest inventories against actual on-the-ground surveys, and they have not stopped cutting in forest areas that they know will not grow back. As a result, forest regrowth in the Northwest is only 64% of the volume being cut. This is not sustainable forestry." Daniel Weiss, an aide to Miller, said the report substantiates NASA photographs released last week showing that the Northwest's forests are in worse shape than the rainforests of Brazil. Through aerial photographs and people's analysis of on-the-ground surveys, we can see that in some areas the Forest Service says are reforested, there in fact are no trees growing there. Do you see the enemy? The enemy is you and me. Like pigs, we consume anything, forgetting what tomorrow will bring. We just keep on eating without even a hunch. There is no free lunch. Our children will pay what we're stealing today. Do you see the enemy? The enemy is you and me. Do you see the enemy? The enemy is you and me. Like pigs, we consume anything, forgetting what tomorrow will bring. We just keep on eating without even a hunch. There is no free lunch. Our children will pay what we're stealing today. Do you see the enemy? The enemy is you and me.
Hello. It's time Montanans realize that
their national forests are now under attack by the Bacchus-Burns Bill. These are remaining wildlands. These roadless national forests are critical to maintaining the viability of population species such as the grizzly bear and the wolf, which are now threatened species in our bioregion. As we'll see in these aerial photographs, there has been much clear cutting, and this threatens many wild animals. These are critical remaining wildlands and roadless areas that if the Bacchus-Burns Bill does pass Congress, these remaining wildlands will probably be harvested for the timber industry, and Montana's future will go to the bank. And
hello, my name is Humphrey Turner. You know, I just want to speak about the Bacchus-Burns Bill. I just realize I have grown up in Montana, and I realize how emotional Montanans are about this issue, but these are national forests we're talking about in the Bacchus-Burns Bill, and that the rest of the country is concerned is only appropriate. The public lands of the Northern Rockies belong to all the American people, not just to citizens of any one state or any one social economic group. The natural resources of these public lands fall into two categories of use as I see it: extractive and non-extractive. The extractive resources are timber, minerals, grazing land, gas and oil. The non-extractive ones are pristine landscapes, the mosaic of plant and animal life, the water, the soil, and the basic ecological systems and biological processes that make the non-extractive, non-fragmented resource a living entity. Holistically, this living entity is biodiversity itself, and biodiversity thrives in interrelated ecosystems.
I would just like to add that the Congress and the American people have in the past shown great vision and leadership in creating our national parks, national forests, wildlife refuges, and wilderness areas as a means of protecting and preserving the non-extractive values that translate into beauty, science, enjoyment, philosophy, lifestyle, and for some, religion. They are the heritage of all Americans. They are the property of the many and not of the few, as is sometimes asserted by special interest groups.
Well, on the other hand, the extractive resources of our public lands cannot be utilized and enjoyed equally by all citizens. They become the personal property of those few who have the power and resources to exploit them. Over time, these proprietary interests become accepted as vested in special interest groups, such as loggers and miners. Well, let me say we all recognize the need for both economic use and preservation of our public lands. The question is, where lies the balance? Certainly, Bacchus's bill allocating approximately 5 million of 6 million unroaded acres to extractive use is not a balanced bill, nor is it a wilderness bill. It is a shameful giveaway, this catering to special interests, with the resulting fragmentation of ecosystems, is especially unacceptable to my people and to anyone, and unconscionable at a time in history when we clearly understand the necessity of preserving biodiversity and ecosystem structure. We need these large areas of near pristine environment. We need these as reservoirs of undiscovered information, as ecological benchmarks, as keys to understanding both natural and man-made changes of the future, and as sustainable economic assets when these uses do not threaten to degrade or destroy other values. The earth was created by the assistance of the sun, and it should be left as it was. The country was made without lines of demarcation, and it is no man's business to divide it. I see the whites all over the country gaining wealth, and see their desire to give us lands which are worthless. The earth and myself are of one mind. The measure of the land and the measure of our bodies are the same. Say to us, if you can say it, that you were sent by the creative power to talk to us. Perhaps you think the Creator sent you here to dispose of us as you see fit. If I thought you were sent by the Creator, I might be induced to think you had a right to dispose of me. Do not misunderstand me, but understand me fully with reference to my affection for the land. I never said the land was mine to do with it as I choose. The one who has the right to dispose of it is the one who has created it. I claim a right to live on my land, and accord you the privilege to live on yours. Our land is more valuable than your money. It will last forever. It will not even perish by the flames of fire. As long as the sun shines and the waters flow, this land will be here to give life to men and animals. We cannot sell the lives of men and animals. Therefore, we cannot sell this land. It was put here for us by the Creator's Spirit, and we cannot sell it, because it does not belong to us. You can count your money and burn it without the nod of a buffalo's head, but only the Great Spirit can count the grains of sand and the blades of grass of these plains. I see no longer the curling smoke rising from our lodge poles. I hear no longer the songs of the women as they prepare the meal. The antelope have gone, the buffalo wallows are empty, only the wail of the coyote is heard. The white man's medicine is stronger than ours. His iron horse rushes over the buffalo trail. He talks to us through his telephone. We are like birds with a broken wing. My heart is cold within me. My eyes are growing dim. Oh, please, stop the Bacchus Burns bell. Write your senators and tell them to kill Senate Bill 1696, especially Bruce Vinto, Chairman of the House Committee on Public Lands, 1-800-332-6177. And tell them Chief Singing River sent you.
special permit from the federal government in Denver to keep birds, and I especially like birds of prey. Does anybody here have any birds at home, like parrots, parakeets? You can buy those. You can go down to Petland or whatever and buy these birds. The birds I brought are all native to Montana, and consequently you need a special federal permit to keep them. And the first permit I got was a federal rehabilitation license, and that was in order to get these birds that are injured, hopefully back on their feet and flying and back on their wings, and patch them up and let them go and get them back out in the wild where they belong. The birds that I brought today all have problems that prevented me from releasing them. And everyone that got in here earlier can see that Clive here has a problem that obviously we can take a look. I'll have her come down and we can take a better look. She's going to cooperate. Come here, Clive. Come on, girl. She likes that perch. Anyway, we can see that she has a problem. Looking at her head, can you notice what that might be? She's missing an eye. So, is her eye going to grow back, do you think? And then I can let her go. No, this is a permanent injury. And what happened is Clive is exactly 4 years old. This is her birthday right about now. She hatched 4 years ago, and I got her when she was about a month old. And what had happened is her nest tree blew down, and on the way down, she got her eye poked. Eventually, all the fluid drained out, and she lost her eye. She has another problem, and this might be related to pesticides or some kind of poisoning, but she has a deformity. And if you look at birds' wings, they're just like our hands, and they're homologous to our hands. This is her thumb, and you can see that her thumb is deformed a little bit. So in the case of Clive here with one eye and a bad thumb sounds kind of silly, but they use this allula for steering and fine-tuning their flight. This is a double whammy. This bird is definitely not going to ever be released. She's 4 years old now, and I might have her another 20 years or so. Who knows? In the wild, they wouldn't live that long, but in captivity, being fed and spoiled rotten like she is, then she gets really good care, and we get rid of her parasites every few months and delouse her and give her fine choice of food. She's so spoiled that she has to have her ground squirrels cut in half and then quartered before she'll eat them, which is kind of a mess. But anyway, Clive is a good example of birds of prey's adaptations. And all the birds of prey have to find, catch, and kill prey every day in order to live, or every other day, or somewhere along that line. Clive has one of the adaptations for finding her prey is kind of messed up, and that's her eyesight. Hawks have about 5 times better eyesight than we do. So that's how they find their prey. How do they catch their prey?
With the talons.
That's right. Their talons are these big giant feet. Thank goodness I have gloves on, because these feet are very powerful and strong, and these talons are pretty sharp. Clive, I don't really ever use a glove, but if she loses her balance, then it goes right in and take me to St. Pat's, I guess. So, but anyway, they find their prey with their eyesight, catch it with their feet, and then they kill it with their beak. And that's what all the birds of prey have, is this very strong, curved beak. And hawks like to tear their prey apart and make a real mess. That's why they generally don't have any feathers on their toes, because they make a mess in that respect. They want to keep a little bit clean. But they find, catch, and kill prey every day. And if something goes wrong with any one of these mechanisms, this bird is dead. In the case of Clive, obviously one eye. If it was a scratch on the eye, it might reduce its ability to hunt. A sprained wrist is another thing. Concussion, getting hit by a car, we get quite a few of those. Birds hitting windows, we get a lot of those. Another thing that happens occasionally is a bird is so big that it'll ground out an electrical wire and become electrocuted. I got a golden eagle that the power went in the wing and out the foot, and that bird eventually died, unfortunately. We get some birds that are shot. When do you go bird, hawk, and owl hunting? What time of year? Hunter safety. When do you go owl and hawk hunting? When do you buy your hawk and owl license and go hunting? Who knows? When? Never. Thank you. Never. They're all protected birds. That's why I need a license to keep these birds, a federal license, and that's why they're protected. As a matter of fact, you aren't even allowed to have feathers from these birds. Even if you find a feather that has been molted or find a dead bird on the road, you're not allowed to keep feathers of these birds. So they're very very, very much protected under the Migratory Bird Act. And that's pretty good because we don't really need any more birds being shot so people can see them up close. Clive is a female red tail. You can see she has her red tail. It took her a year to get that. And the reason she's called Clive, which is a boy's name, is because I thought she was a boy. But she got bigger and bigger and bigger and turned into a female. So somehow that was kind of miraculous. But Clive I've had now for 4 years, and she lives in a big goat pen with a whole series of perches and a big bath for her to bathe and get water, and pretty much gets fed every morning. I feed her, and she's spoiled. The next bird I wanted to show you is my meanest bird. And you can see it certainly isn't the largest of the birds, but this bird has a pretty good attack mechanism. And she's hiding in the corner now. Sort of sounds like a woodpecker, right? It's not.
No.
Okay.
She doesn't have a wing.
Yes. This is a screech owl named Crackety Jones. She called her Crackety Jones because you can hear her cracking her beak there. But Crackety Jones is a screech owl, and this bird was found here in Tura about 3 years ago. And it was hit by a car flying across the road at night. And what happened is we had to, her wing was broken, it healed straight out, and it couldn't bend correctly, so we had to amputate the wing. Is her wing going to grow back? No. So this is another keeper bird forever. She was an adult when I got her, and she's at least 3 or 4 now, so I might have her another 4 or 5 years. I'm not sure how old she is. But screech owls live in wooded areas, and that's why they have this cryptic coloration, they call it. If you look at her back, she looks just like what? She's bark, tree bark. And that's what screech owls are pretty good at hunting. Do these hunt during the day or during the night? Nighttime, right. So these guys hunt at night, and during the day, she hunkers up next to a limb or the bole of the tree and sticks her little ears straight up and stands straight up, and she looks just like a knot on a tree. And that's why every morning when I go in to feed her, she's standing in her little room with her ears up and her little eyes are slits, and she thinks I can't see her. But of course I can. I know that she's there. Then she gets her treat of the day. She gets a couple, 3 or 4 of these. And these are lab mice that we get from the Rocky Mountain Labs in Hamilton. These are mice that they bred for experimentation. These aren't experimented on. I've been informed many times, and thank goodness they give them to us, because this is a staple diet for all these birds. These are vitamin pills for these guys. How do owls eat mice? Do they kind of put them on a plate and cut them up with a knife and fork? No. How do they eat mice?
They eat them, and then a while later they spit out the pellets.
That's right. They swallow these things whole. We'll see if Jonesy will eat one for us. Probably not. Sometimes she'll eat one right out of my hand, and other times she'll just drop it on the ground. But they swallow these mice whole, and afterwards, after 6 hours or so in their gizzard, because they have a crop and a glandular stomach and then a gizzard, in the gizzard they form these pellets. And I guess we'll be able to dissect a couple of these later. That's always fun. What happens is all the material that they can't digest, which is the bones, the teeth, the fur, in the case of birds, feathers, they form into these pellets and cough them up straight out. Usually, in the case of like gray horned owls, about 12 hours after they've eaten. So that's one way of looking around and seeing maybe little areas on the ground that have a lot of pellets. It's probably a daytime roost of an owl. Does anybody here ever go get firewood with their dads or brothers or anybody? What do they always tell you to leave? They always ask you to leave a certain kind of tree out there, and please don't saw it down. Do you know what kind?
It's the ones that like the woodpeckers on them.
That's right, and you can tell they have holes in it. And that's where these birds nest. Now, do the owls go up to the tree bark and peck away until there's a hole? Woodpeckers do that, you said, right?
Yeah,
what other kind of animals might live in these holes?
Owls.
Yeah, other small owls. Anything else can you think of? But,
Insects and squirrels.
yeah, squirrels. Squirrels like these holes, especially flying squirrels. So it's pretty handy to keep these trees out there, these wildlife trees that have holes in them, so that all these other birds can nest and lay their eggs in there, being as they can't make the holes themselves. So that's what Crackety Jones would do, is would be hanging out in one of these holes and nesting early in the year. They actually, the woodpecker might build this hole to use every year, but owls nest earlier than woodpeckers, so they might say dibs and get it first. So it's kind of a timely thing for the owls. Screech owls eat mice. What else do they eat?
Insects.
Insects, right.
Squirrels.
Squirrels might be a little big, but they eat all the different kinds of insects, maybe shrews. What they do eat is one thing that's kind of odd, is they like to go down and wade in stream beds and catch crawdads. So that's kind of a funny thing to imagine, these owls eating crawdads. But they eat a lot of insects, plus they might eat some songbirds that they catch at night, unaware. So, but this is a nice big female screech owl. Is this full grown?
Yeah.
Yes. All those owls that you see, pygmy owl, saw-whet owl, screech owl, if you see them flying around and feathered, that's all the bigger they're going to get. They don't grow every year and get bigger and bigger like other animals. When they fly, when they fledge, when they leave the nest, it's all the bigger they're ever going to get. And they actually sometimes weigh more than the parents because the parent birds have been stuffing them full of food that whole time. These are the birds that make a kind of noise that you can hear. This is the largest box, but certainly not the largest bird. This is the best jumping bird that I've ever seen, ever. And that's why I put her in such a large box, because she can jump right out and get away. If I don't watch it. There we go. Okay.
One wing again.
This obviously has one wing. That's what's wrong with this bird. Is this a hawk or an owl? It's a hawk. Yes, it's a hawk. It's a special kind of hawk. This hawk was named after someone named William Cooper. Can you guess what kind of hawk it might be?
Cooper's hawk.
Cooper's hawk. Very good. That's great. Because they're not really common and they're not really well-known birds. But this is a Cooper's hawk, and her name is Alice Cooper. And I've had her now for I guess about 4 years. And she lives in the chicken coop, which is kind of ironic because these are birds that they used to call chicken hawks. They call them chicken hawks because they look just like chickens. Why would they call them chicken hawks? They might eat chickens. That's exactly the case. And in the case of Alice here, she was chasing a bird or chasing something, hit a fence, and her wing had broken. It healed straight out, and once again we had to amputate the tip. Her wing isn't going to grow back. Cooper's hawks are accipiters, just like sharp-shinned hawks and goshawks, and I have one of these hanging around my house. I have about 6 bird feeders at my house, and I have a Cooper's hawk hanging around. Is this Cooper's hawk eating the seed, do you think, at the bird feeders?
No,
or the suet? It's eating the birds. That's exactly right. That's what Cooper's hawks eat, are other birds. So it'd be kind of scary to be a little grosbeak, and here comes one of these darting by. But these birds have certain adaptations for hunting other birds. One is, you can see, if you can imagine, if she had both her wings, broad, round wing, a long tail that she uses for what? What does she use her tail for?
Balance.
Balance, and what else?
Steering.
Steering, good. This is her steering wheel here. So if she had both her wings, you could see much better. But these are adaptations for going through tight little trees and little areas of thickets. And what she can do is sit and wait for a bird to fly by and come out and take it by surprise. These birds are so mean, as a matter of fact. Well, I guess mean isn't the right word. They're so aggressive that if they knock a bird to the ground, they'll actually go out on foot after it. And that brings me to these feet. That's why she's such a good jumper. She has these really long, delicate legs that she can use for grabbing birds right out of the air. So she also has a little notch on her beak for breaking the necks of the birds when she catches them. Falcons also have that. Has anybody heard of a peregrine falcon? What do they do better than any other bird? Do you know?
Kill the other birds.
They're good at killing other birds. They call them duck hawks because they like to kill ducks, not because they look like ducks. But they do something better than any other bird. What would that be?
Fly.
Fly, because they fly
Fast.
fast. They can fly 200 miles an hour. In the case of a red-tailed hawk, they might be able to go top speed cruising 60, maybe in a stoop over 100, but falcons are the speed birds. These birds are the ones that are very, very fast, short little breaks through the woods and grab birds out of the sky. So they're Alice. Someone suggested I call her Bungie after she did that a few times. But Alice is an adult bird, a nice big female. Okay, now, how do I know that this is a female bird and this is a female bird? How do I know? It's a nice big female. Do you know?
By its beak?
It's not by its beak, but it's nice, big, huge female.
Its feathers?
No, I'll tell you, the feathers, the plumage is exactly the same between the male and the female. So there's something else that's different.
The size?
The size. So which is bigger?
The female.
The female. See, some people said the boy, some people said the girl, and the hawks and the owls, the females are always bigger. In the case of Alice, she's probably twice as big as a male, her size, of her same species. And I know that lots of girls in kindergarten love to hear that the boys are so much smaller, but this is probably because the females are sitting on the eggs, and the male is bringing food to just the female. Now, when the eggs hatch, the female has to go out and feed all the young as well. And so she might actually go after different species of prey. Might go after quail or grouse or something larger than the male would bring in. So the female's doing a lot more of the real aggressive hunting of larger prey species. So that's maybe why they're separated. But the females are always bigger than the males. Buildings. Oh, this is a jumping bird. Whoa. Okay.
She also has a wing, one wing.
Yes, this bird. Whoa. Also,
It's another bungee.
yes, this probably is more of a bungee bird than any of them. But this is an owl, right? What kind of owl? I'll give you a hint. Boy, does he have short ears. Short-eared owl. Very good. This is a short-eared owl, and his name is Spike. You can't really see his ears, but they're right up above the inside corners of his eyes. And when I go in to feed him every day, he's standing with these two little ears up, and he's standing straight up, and he's clicking his beak and hissing. And I always remember that this bird was taken right in his prime, right out of the wild, and he's still probably pretty mad. Does this bird look just like a pheasant? You know what pheasants look like? Does this almost look dead on a pheasant? No. Not at all. And this was some pheasant hunters shot this bird. People that were hunting up at Nine Pipes, hunting pheasants, shot this bird and shot his wing off. They thought maybe he was a pheasant, or they thought that perhaps he eats pheasants. He's also broken his tail feathers off. All these birds are molting now, so they're getting all new feathers. So he'll be good as new when those come back in. Short-eared owls live up there at Nine Pipes, and they hunt voles. Vole populations go up and down. And if there's a whole million trillion voles out there, they might have as many as 14 eggs at one time in a nest. That's when the food's up. Normally they might only have 4 or 5 or 6 or so, but short-eared owls hunt. This is kind of an odd thing for an owl. They hunt during the day. And they like to cruise really low over fields and fly down and grab mice. So they're pretty good at that. They also have cryptic coloration. The screech owl look like bark. What does he look like? What? Yep, looks like grass. Doesn't it sort of look like grass? So he can stand straight up and in the grass and blend right in. Yes?
Will he eat one of those mice?
I'm pretty sure he won't, but he gets to swallow. We have the small screech owl variety mouse. Then we have the medium-sized short-eared owl-sized mouse. And then we have the jumbo variety, larger critter mouse. And we even get them bigger, and we even get sometimes hamsters and large animals like that. These are all in freezer, frozen in my freezer at home. And every night before I go to bed, I grab 2 handfuls of frozen mice out, and maybe a coyote leg or a badger leg, because I work as a taxidermist too. And I had an osprey, I had 2 ospreys for a while, so maybe a sawed-up carp, and get all this stuff thawing, and then every morning go feed them. And these birds can eat dead food because I'm not going to release them. Okay, I have one last bird here, and this is one that has been to the fair, to the mall, lots of programs around in the area, and it created quite a stir at the Forest Service booth because they thought he was a spotted owl. It's not a spotted owl. Come here. Come on, bud. Come on. Anyway, we said what kind of owl?
Great horn.
Great horned owl. Everybody knows these guys. These are very, very common around here. They're here all year round. And this is a male, so it is bigger or smaller than if it... This is a small little male great horned owl. And when I had him at the fair, someone said that they had an owl at home that was about that big. Do you think they're exaggerating a little bit?
Yes.
Yes, because great horned owls are the biggest owls in North America by weight, and this is still a little male great horned owl. A female would probably stand a lot taller. They look like they're really heavy and big and fat, but these are actually the same size as red-tailed hawks. And that's because they have very, very dense feathers, and they're very quiet when they fly because their feathers are all ruffled on the edges and serrated edges. Has anybody ever had an owl fly by at night and it just flew right by your head and it just scared you because you didn't even know it was there? They're very, very quiet, and that's because they hunt using their ears and their hearing. They don't want the prey to hear them coming, but they want to be able to hear the prey while they're hunting. So occasionally we've been able to release owls that had a bad eye just because they can use their hearing a lot more so than any other birds. Can owls turn their heads all the way around?
Yes.
Can they look behind them?
Yes.
Sure they can. They can turn their heads 270 degrees and look over there. That's because they can't turn their eyes in their head. See, he's doing it now. If he wants to change his direction of vision, he has to turn his whole head. So they have a really loose connection between their skull and their vertebrae, and they can turn their heads, and that's why they always, sometimes people think they can turn them all the way around, but then they just twist right off, wouldn't it? That wouldn't work very well. So anyway, right now he's doing a thing called a gular flutter, and that's just a fancy kind of way of panting. He's controlling his heat by panting, sort of like a dog right now. That's what he's doing here. If we look at his eyes, you see how big his eyes are, and look how big his head is. Sometimes the larger owls and hawks, their eyes are as big as a full-grown person's eyes. So if you look at his eyes and think that they're as big as our eyes, do you think his brain's really big? No. Do you think owls are the smartest birds there are?
No.
Oh, now, no offense, Bobo, but these guys are not the smartest birds around. They do pretty darn well because they are fairly smart, but the smartest birds around live right here in Tura. They live everywhere in the area. Can anybody guess? I'll give you a hint. They're black. What? Crows. Those are the smartest birds around. The crows, the ravens, the magpies, all the jay family, especially crows, are the smartest birds there are. You'd never know that when you see them picking through all the styrofoam at the dump or whatever. You'd never know that. But they're the smartest birds. Owls are not the smartest. Everybody used to think they were. That's probably because they stand upright and they have these big eyes and they have a beak that sort of looks like a nose. In other words, they sort of look like people, right? And that's probably why the whole myth of owls being the smartest birds around started. As far as their ears, these are just little ear tufts, but they have these big ear flaps, these big huge openings on either side of their facial disc, and that's how they have one ear opening above the other. They're asymmetrical, and they can locate prey just using their hearing alone. So these guys they may not be the absolute smartest birds that can count to 10 or anything, but they're pretty adaptive and do pretty well here in Montana. They're all over. They don't migrate. They're here all over. There's probably some right out here in the playground. You can get these guys to fly down to you in January. You can go, whoo, 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 just like that, and they'll fly right down to you when they're breeding. Used to do it as a kid all the time. It's pretty fun. Yes?
Do they eat the same thing as a red-tailed hawk?
These guys, yes, they eat the same food, and that's a good point. I had a great horned owl that got hit by a car, and I went out to let him go during the daytime, and within 2 minutes, 2 red-tailed hawks flew down and hit him, and they got in a fight. And the owl flew away and hung out next to a tree, and the hawks went away, and everybody was fine. But that's because these owls eat the same food as the hawks. When do these guys eat it, though? At night. And these guys eat it during the day, so they're avoiding the competition by hunting at different times of the day. So if an owl's out during the day, hawks will mob it, and vice versa. If there's a hawk out, the same thing will happen. So that's a good point. They eat the same food. Yes?
How long have you had this owl?
Bobo I've had for, I guess, for over 3 years or so. He was an adult when I got him, and so I don't know how old he is. But he's kind of a 1 in a million bird that he allows people to get close to him without being aggressive at all. I've had these birds jump up in the air and hit me around the eyes, both eyes, so you have to kind of watch it. They are very, very powerful. These feet are weapons. This is what they use for weapons. If you find an owl, a hawk or an owl, best thing is just get a blanket or a coat or something, put it over, get it in a box, or else have someone else come get it, because these feet are dangerous. Generally, they'll try to strike you with their feet. If you find a baby bird, are you going to bring it to me, or what are you going to do with it? Baby bird this time of year.
Just leave it.
Best thing is leave it or get it up off the ground and put it back in the nest, especially if the nest is there. The mom isn't going to abandon the nest because it smells people. The mom's going to keep feeding those young, so that's another good point. Yes.
What happened to Bobo's wings?
This was shot off in hunting season because he probably thought he was a deer or maybe a spike elk. Hard to say. I don't think they really thought he was a deer or an elk or anything. But this was shot in hunting season. It was someone that obviously didn't know these birds are protected and maybe wanted to get a closer look. But he was found on the logging road, and I got him. Someone brought him to Fish and Game, and then I got him afterwards. A lot of times they come in such bad condition, you have to stick a long tube down their throat and get their electrolyte balance back up and get antibiotics in them, get some Nutrical, get their condition back up, and then I have a series of flight rooms I move them into, and hopefully before I can release them. So probably half the birds I get in are simple concussions or maybe sprains or something, and I can let them go, which is really good. But in the meantime, these guys have been to talk to over 10,000 people with these birds that I have now. So look at his eyes up close. You can see how the surface is. Yeah, it depends if he's looking up close or far away.
And what's our state bird?
Bald eagle. That's our kind. Western meadowlark. Western meadowlark.
And is that a native bird or is it a migratory bird?
Native.
So they chose the meadowlark for our state bird, but it leaves in the wintertime. So maybe I think they should have chosen the magpie as our state bird because it stays here all year.
They're pests. Yeah, they're pests. Because we want a bird that most people won't try and kill. I mean, we want to keep those birds. That they won't shoot. Yeah, and if they're gone part of the time, then people have a less chance of hurting them and shooting them and killing them.
Michael, who'd want to shoot a magpie?
Really? Good point.
We need a bird that won't be here during the winter.